All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've been asking for this for a long time. You want me to interview more. And you know what? You're right. I need to do more interviews. And I listened and I was like, you know what? Who do I want to interview? And I reached out to a few people in particular. And my guest today is one of those people. We've been in the same realm, I guess, on the internet in the Twitterverse or X world. And I happened to find his takes rather refreshing. And this has been an ongoing for many years now. I don't remember when we became mutuals, but this is Adam Coleman. If you guys don't know him, give him a welcome to the show. Adam, welcome to the channel.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me back on.
Of course, yeah. The internet is a wild place, and there are few people on the internet that I find always like a good solid take. And I would say that you're definitely one of those people that I always, whenever there's something going on and I see that you have a take on it, I'm like, oh, this is going to be good. And it usually is refreshing. It's logical. And, I always appreciate when you say something. And you've got a few books now. I see you've got them behind you. Black
Yes.
Victim to Black Victor. And The Children We Left Behind. Now, this is your newer book, right? The Children We Left
Correct.
Behind? What's
Yep.
this one
Came out
about?
April 1st. Uh, the Children Left Behind. I guess the general thesis of the book is talking about the biggest social issues that we face in the West, whether it be homelessness, drug addiction, sexual promiscuity. The list goes on. Criminality. Violent crime. Um, those big issues are linked to each other. More often than not, the people who are perpetrating it are people who grew up in tumultuous homes. They are people who came from family separation of some sort, whether it be a single parent home or children of divorce.
Yeah,
Mass shootings is another example. Nearly every mass shooter comes from some sort of broken home situation. Um, and it's not to say that obviously, if you come from a broken home, that you're going to be a mass shooter or criminal. I
of
am one of
course.
those kids who grew up in a broken home. The point is to talk about the fringes because when there's always a fringe to some sort of problem, but if the problem increases, the fringe increases. So for me, the way I'm looking at it from an analytical standpoint, if the problem becomes tenfold, the fringes will probably become tenfold as well. So we can't
Right.
be shocked that particular crimes are increasing in whether it be in certain communities, certain areas, or particular types of crimes or particular types of activity, depraved activity. These things increase. And why is because they all have this central issue of family separation. No one is born a criminal, right? They are groomed by society, they're groomed by their environment. Something happens to them. Sometimes it's one particular life event that happens to them that changes the trajectory of their life. And so if we look at it from the standpoint of the root cause, rather than always, and I'm not saying that we don't punish people or become like, just super empathetic to the point of doing nothing and giving them a pass. At the end of the day, you're an adult, you do something wrong, you get punished for it. What I'm saying is, if we want to address the problem in the future or try to actually help people, we have to understand the root cause of it. Where did it all
Yeah.
start? Rather than just saying, well, just lock them up and everything will be fine. No, not necessarily, because guess what? A lot of those people, they have kids themselves and the cycle continues and the problem just gets worse.
Yeah.
So if we don't talk about the family separation angle and the culture that fosters it, because it's not just the people who are having children out of wedlock who are bad parents. It's not just them. It is a culture surrounding them that basically allows it, um, coddles it, doesn't criticize it, and it goes on a very personal level. Because often we talk about society as like a big thing. I'm talking on a
Yeah.
personal level. So many people that I've met who know someone who's a terrible parent, who knows that they're a father who doesn't see their kids, who have purposefully abandoned their responsibilities, uh, adults who beat their kids relentlessly, who mistreat their children. and they have friends and family around them that know these things and say absolutely nothing for them. They don't advocate for their kids. They make excuses for them. Oh, they're stressed and so on and so forth. But everyone is worried about the adult and how they'll feel. They're worried about their relationship with that other adult. And by doing that, they're never advocating for the child who has no voice in that situation. Because there are a lot of things that you can do that are not illegal, that won't get you in trouble by the law, that makes you a terrible parent. And it is not illegal to be a shitty dad or a shitty mother, right? There's
Right.
plenty of ways that you will not go to jail. And so if the only ramification is, well, if you break the law, then that's a sign of being a bad parent, then we are fucked.
I agree
'Cause,
with you there.
we have to have some sort of social standard. And there's a chapter in my book called Socially Comfortable Terrible Parents. And that's exactly what it is. They are socially comfortable. They get to come to the cookout. They get to hang out with us, at their friend's house.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, you know that they have a daughter, a son somewhere around the country that they are purposefully abandoning, or that they make excuses about not being involved in, or they don't pay to help take care of. They're a terrible parent, yet they're comfortable around you. And so
Yeah.
we have to start making these people uncomfortable by talking to them about it. And if they don't like it, then that is your sign. But I have a rule just personally, especially because of my childhood growing up without my father. I'm not friends with terrible parents. I'm just not. And if they're family members,
Yeah.
I'll call them out on it, or I just will not make them feel comfortable around me.
I respect that. I mean, you're being honest with them, especially being a parent yourself. You don't like, well, I'm a new father, and if my friends are shitty parents, I would never want them babysitting. You know what
Right.
I mean? Or being around my kids because I'm an uncle to 8 nieces and nephews, right? And I'm very much the same around them as I would around my own child. Like I don't let them get away with things, but I'm also, I try to be a good solid person in their life. And
Mhm.
I can I can I can imagine if I see someone who's a shitty parent who's like an asshole to their kids or like smacks their kids unnecessarily or whatever. If
Mhm.
I don't know if some people think that if even is too much, but yeah, I wouldn't want them around my own children, and um it sucks though at the same time because I've had people that I'm Uncle Adam to their kids, and I came out as a Trump supporter in 2020, and after that
Mhm.
happened, they said they don't want me around their kids anymore. So there's also like the opposite kind of energy that people have because of their own adult political views, and they get lost in the sauce. Um, but you were saying something about how it's kind of like a snowball effect and this like downward spiral of it's exponentially getting worse and worse because the shitty parents are having kids and then being shitty parents and then those kids are growing up and being even shittier parents. And I like where your head's at, that kids are innocent and they're the ones that we need to really focus on and be there for. And that's really what you're doing by calling out these shitty parents. Like when you have a friend that's a shitty parent, it's like you almost got to be like, I don't even know your kid, but I like your kid more than I like you. So I'm going to call
Yeah.
you out on being a shitty person. I mean, well, we got to bring back public shame, right? I don't feel like shame exists anymore. People have no shame. People all they want to do, they'll literally drop their pants and run around and take videos of them doing stupid shit and post it on the internet just because they know it'll get clicks. Right?
Right.
There's no so like
Well,
how does that change, right? And that's what I was the whole time you were talking, all I could think is like how do we stem that tide? Like how is there a way to change that?
Well, it's interesting that scenario that you gave. Basically, someone who is attention seeking. So then the question becomes, why are they attention seeking? Right. So we
Good
can we
point.
can obviously talk about the shaming part, but why is, let's say, a young adult? Why is a young adult attention seeking? Well, someone is seeking attention
Validation.
because they need validation. Well,
Yep.
why do they feel that they need validation? It's because they weren't getting it in the first place.
Good
And
point.
so
Yep, that's true.
who who are the people who are supposed to validate us? And
Parents.
especially especially their parents. But
Yep.
there's different roles that each adult figure plays for kids. So the most important parental figure to every child is the same-sex parent. But the opposite sex
So,
parent
like,
teaches
the
them.
father of the son or the
Correct.
mother to the daughter. Okay, I understand.
Yeah, the most important is the same-sex parent because that parent directly and indirectly models the behavior of that child, whether the child realizes it or not, right?
Yeah,
You have a son, correct?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so you are the most important parental figure to your son
I think
because
about that
as
every day.
exactly, and that's good. That means that you're a
Yep,
good parent because you actually care.
yep,
Um, And so your son is watching you. Your son is watching your temperament. He's watching how you respond to stuff. He's watching your emotional maturity, your interests. He's watching all of these things. He's watching how you interact with him. All of these things are like micro lessons for that child. And everything about childhood is about repetition. So the
yeah,
more you are consistent with your demeanor and your behavior and you setting boundaries and teaching him things, the more he gets familiar with that and more comfortable, and more likely he'll repeat these things. Now, your wife is also important. It's not to say that she's not important, but she's important for a different reason. She's important because she is part of the male to female dynamic between you two. So, what he's essentially saying is, my father treats my mother a particular way, and that's how a man is supposed to treat a woman. And my
yeah.
mother treats my father a particular way, and that's how a woman is supposed to treat a man. And so that becomes normal for him. If he goes out in the world and he meets a scantily clad, very promiscuous woman, that's going to be sort of off-putting for him, assuming he's in a role where he wants like a long-term relationship. Let's
Yeah,
just say
sure, of
that.
course.
Um, but that type of woman he wouldn't marry, right? Because one, he wouldn't feel comfortable bringing that type of woman around his parents, who
That's a
he
good
loves and
point.
respects.
Yeah,
And she models a type of behavior that is foreign to him. And that's the type of thing that we have to kind of understand. You can reverse the sexes. And I honestly, I see way more because most single parent homes involve a mother who is raising the children, right?
right.
So everyone always understands the female dynamic, right? But it's the male dynamic that's missing more often than not. So the girls who grow up with their mothers, they have a woman figure, they have a woman model to mimic, but they don't have the male to female
Relationship.
interaction, the
Right.
relationship aspect. So what happens
Mhm.
is either one of two things, and I have a chapter in my book called "The Daughters We Disappoint." I would say I'm kind of obviously there are other variable circumstances
Of
that can
course.
happen, but
Yeah,
the two
generalizing.
major, just generalize, yeah. There's two major things that I notice happen. Either one, um, she is lost, and she's like a what's the best way of putting it? Like any shiny object gets her attention, right? So the
Yeah,
flashy guy with money, the pretty boys, those like you and I know those guys are players,
of
right?
course.
But for them, they don't know. They don't know that this is actually a bad road to go down, right?
Right.
They don't have a model to mimic. That guy is not like her father. Well, she doesn't have her father there. He's never been a model, so she doesn't know. So she ends up spending years with the guy who has no interest in her. It's like very obvious to you and I. We can watch. You're like, yeah, that guy's a piece of shit. I don't know why you're with him. But she gets wrapped up in emotions and stays with that guy for a long time and gets disappointed, right? It's
Mhm.
inevitable with that particular situation. But it's like that because she has no idea what she is looking for when it comes to a long-term relational success. Um, and the second thing that I notice more often is resentment. It's anger. So these are the situations where the most important man in her life let her down. And so no man is dependable. That is a conclusion that she comes up with very early on. So these are the situations where you see a woman going towards a very obviously weaker man. She's the
Right.
woman who overtalks the guy and he allows it. This is the woman who denigrates the guy she's with and speaks to him like a child, right?
Yep.
It's because she's in control, because she can't feel that if I give him the chance to be in control, that he will lead us to success. Because my father disappointed me. there's no chance that this guy's going to do any better. That is how she operates. But that woman is especially miserable because I don't think any woman actually enjoys being in that position. Um,
Right.
and they might verbalize it, but I don't listen to what people say. I watch their actions, and their
Yep.
actions are misery. They don't like it whatsoever, and they wish they could be in a position where they could trust a man, but they haven't
Yep.
worked through that disappointment of their father. So many women stay in that position because it is the safest, but it's the most miserable position to be in.
And then you have their kids that are learning that dynamic from
Correct.
them, which then becomes norm. And that lack of trust, like I can't fathom being with someone that you can't trust. You know,
It happens so often, and they have multiple kids with a guy they
yeah.
hate.
Oh man, I can't imagine that. Like I trust my wife with my life,
Yeah.
and I know she feels the same way about me, and I know my son is going to learn that. And it's man, it's really sad on how many people, like looking at the people that I've known in my life and the way that they react and act. And you know, I've seen glimpses of, I've met some of their families, and I know a lot
Mhm.
of people that this applies to. You know, I'm sure a lot of people out there all know somebody that that fits. You know, and it's really sad because it ruins the chance for them to even find that trust, because it's such a core trauma that happens so early on. I mean, I learned a lot. I
Mhm.
still learn every day. You know, every month we get this pamphlet that gives like, this is what your baby's learning now. This is the kind of stuff that they're taking in, and the amount of information. Just 9 months. He's 9 months right now. A couple days ago. Just the amount of information that he takes in and is understanding is insane. Way more than I thought.
Yeah.
Um, and I mean, and if I was gone, like a big chunk of that would just be only from her. And I could see that it's wild. And then you think about the boys that are
Mhm.
being raised by these women, that like men ain't shit. Men, you know, these women that have been, you know, f- their trust is now gone. I mean, I don't know if that resentment spills out to their son. You know,
It does
if
in a lot of
imagine if you're
cases.
a boy, yeah, listening to your mother talk about how men aren't shit. It's like, well, he's a man. Like that's what you're teaching him. And I mean, we just kind of talked about the female. I'm sure you got an episode or a, chapter in your book about the boys that are left behind. What's that one called?
Well, that's the bulk of it because it's my childhood.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. I mean, that's your own personal experience,
Yeah,
right?
I grew up without my father being active in my life. So I knew who my father was, or was, I should say. He passed away some years ago now.
Okay.
Um, but he just wasn't around. I was born in Detroit. He always lived in Detroit. And I think it's important to note that when I was born, my father was 50, my mother was 24.
Wow. Okay.
Um, and he was married. So we were effectively like the other kids.
Hmm.
And that's as a married man, he can only come around so often to be involved. Um, and ultimately, we left Detroit when I was around 6 years old.
Okay.
And from that point, I think might have been, I could be wrong because, I was very young, but it might have been
Sure.
like some years before I saw him again. Um, and even when I was in Detroit, it was explained to me like our relationship wasn't all that great. Um, but I knew that I wanted my,
Your and his relationship wasn't that great, or your
yeah,
mother? Okay.
yeah, between me and my father.
Okay.
Um, you know, essentially throughout my entire life, my father was just a stranger. Like I really, for the longest time, I didn't know his real first name. Um, like I just didn't know anything about him. There was
Yeah.
nothing ever personal that he ever shared with me. He didn't really spend much time with me. Um, you know, there was nothing beneficial that he showed me throughout my entire life. Um, and I suffered a lot because of it. At the age of 8, I was admitted into a mental hospital.
At
Um,
8.
yeah,
Wow.
for suicidal ideation.
At
Um,
8.
yeah,
Where were you at this time? Because you left Detroit at 6.
yeah. So when we left Detroit, we actually moved to Virginia first, in Fairfax County. We were there for about a year, and then we moved to New York to stay with some family, but that didn't work out. So we ended up homeless for 2 or 3 months, like living in a hotel room, and then someone offered a room for us to stay in inside a trailer. Um, so we stayed there for a little bit, and then we finally got an apartment. But by the time we got the apartment, like I was just negatively reacting to things, and
I don't blame you.
essentially my sister's 4 years older than me, so she remembers a lot more.
And you guys have the
Um,
same father?
yeah, same father, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So she remembers more, and she was telling me how uh, I basically had a nervous breakdown. Um, I was One time I was underneath the kitchen table in a fetal position, screaming. Um, I didn't know what to do. I told my mother that if she loved me, she'd help me die. Um, so I suffered a lot from depression, and I didn't know. When you're 8, you don't like death for an 8-year-old doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like even me telling my mom, I wanted to get underneath my bed and hope for my bed to fall on top of me, which is
Mhm.
like a very, you know, kid way to think about suicide. I don't think
Right.
I really wanted to kill myself. I just didn't know how to express how I was feeling. But um, she went to the professionals and they suggested to have me admitted. Um, and so all I remember is just being brought to this building that I wasn't familiar with, and my mother handed me off to some people. Um, and it took me like an hour to kind of realize why I was there. It was very confusing for me.
Yeah, yeah, I'm
Um,
sure.
so I was there for 3 months.
Wow,
Um,
3 months.
yes,
It's a long time.
it is a long time. And the way I describe it to people, when you go to jail for 3 months, when you're getting out, like you can bite your time and just wait it
Yeah,
out. But when you go into a mental hospital, you don't know how long you're going to be there for. So every day you're wondering, like, is today going to be the day? And then when
yeah,
you add that on to your little kid, you don't know if today's going to be the day. And then your mother comes to visit you and you're asking your mom, am I going home today? And she has to tell you no. And you're there longer. And so, you know, it took a long time because I blocked out many of these memories. It took a long time for me to feel comfortable even just like thinking about it and talking about
yeah.
it. Um, but I did have a conversation with my sister some years ago, and it was the first time I heard my mother's perspective of what was happening because I always thought about me as a kid, but I never thought about what my mother went through. And my
Mhm.
mother would leave from these visitations with my sister. My sister remembers my mom crying all the way home. Her little boy is locked up. Um, so, there was a lot of turmoil for me as a little kid. We were homeless twice actually. Um, and the second time we ended up in a homeless shelter. Um, we were evicted and we found another place to go to, but my mother was essentially scammed. She gave a
That
deposit,
sucks.
they took the money and ran. Um, so like we had all of our stuff on the front lawn and that we had to take and put into storage, and then we ended up in a homeless shelter for some months before my mom got enough money for us to get into a different place. Um, and that place, I still remember, it was a townhouse. I had roaches in the kitchen, but it was better than being in a in a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
Um, so all of that happened, and my father wasn't there. Like my father didn't visit me in in the mental hospital. I'm not even sure if he knew I was there. Um, all the good and bad significant moments of my childhood, my father wasn't there. Um, I would rarely get phone calls from him, and all of them were very superficial. How are you? How's school? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, so the last time I saw my father, I was 16 in person, and the last time I talked to him, I was 21. Um, I called him, and he didn't seem very interested. I had just had my son, um, so I felt like I wanted to call my father and maybe tell him that he has a grandchild or something like that, but I never got a chance to. It felt like I was bothering him, like he wasn't
Yeah.
interested in talking to me. Um, so from that moment on, I told myself, like, I'm not going to try. Like, if he was to call me, I'll talk to him, but I'm not going to try anymore. It's very obvious based off of his actions. And I can say this because, once again, I look at someone's actions, not their words. And it's not like he's really said this to me, anyways. But my
Yeah.
father didn't love me. There was no expression of love. There was no want for connection. There was none of that. Um, he had a little bit of a better relationship with my sister, but even my sister says, I had the same father as you. So, you know, he was always just hands off. Um, and this wasn't a circumstance, and this definitely exists where the mother's keeping the father away and he's fighting. That wasn't the case. My mother never tried to keep
Yeah.
that man from us. Um,
Okay.
if anything, my mother feels regret for not trying to push him to be a little bit more active.
Right.
But I told my mom, like, you can't take the ownership of that. He's a grown man. He didn't want to. Like, you can't
Right.
force my dad to love me. Um, so it is not my mother's responsibility to get my father involved in my life. It's his responsibility. He's a grown man.
Adam, we talked uh, before you just kind of laid out your childhood. We were talking about how kids learn from their parents, especially same sex, right?
Yeah.
Your father, you learned this energy from your father. How did you I have before I even say this, there's a quote that I love.
Mhm.
Everyone's a victim sometimes. Being a victim happens, but you choose to stay a victim. You know, people you can either stay a victim or you can move on with your life. And
Right.
I mean, your book, the first book you wrote, Black Victim to Black Victor, it's almost like that is you realizing, right, that I'm not going to be a victim of this father figure that I had. I'm going to move forward. But how did you do that? Like, where was obviously you've had some deep introspective thoughts of your life, and to be able to even have these kind of conversations and write a book about it or multiple books about it.
Yeah.
But you particularly, right, you had this father who didn't seem to care at all. You just said he didn't even love you. And you now are a very proud father. I know because of your posts. Your son
Yeah.
just got his dream job that he wanted, and I could see like the smile that is creeping on. You're trying to you're like yeah, but like you had to like because you're proud, right? And I can only imagine the relationship that you have with your son. Now, do you have more
Yeah.
kids than him?
No, just
How
one
many
son.
kids? Just one. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But how? Like, how did you achieve this?
Big question, long
I
answer.
know. I know. Yeah, I know. But
So
I'm
what I was
curious.
Yeah, yeah. What I would say is so I had my son at the age of 21, relatively
Mhm.
young, not the youngest, but relatively young. But I was very unprepared from a sense of I wasn't even a man. Like I didn't know how to even be a man. And now I've become a father and I have to teach my son how to become a man. So much of raising my son, I'm also trying to grow as a young man and figure out certain things. Um, and those lessons I'm teaching my son along the way. I guess the best way of putting it is I tried to be the father that I would have wanted when I was a kid. And
Yeah.
so a lot of things that I did, let's say at the very beginning, I would course correct because I remember like when I was a kid, I hated that, and I don't want to do that. And so, is there a better way for me to approach this? So, a lot of the course correction, I could have just repeated everything my mother did with me and just done everything. But I was very conscious about like thinking from my son's perspective. Um, so like an example of, we all have bad days. I would pick up my son and I'd be aggravated at something else. And I was short with him. And he's like, oh, you know, and I would feel bad about it. But I would tell him, you know what, I'm sorry about snapping at you. I apologize. I shouldn't have done that. And I did that because when I was a kid, there were times when, I understand, like my mother's single mother with 2 kids and working long hours, and she would snap. And I would have appreciated that my mother recognized like that wasn't for me. That was for
Yeah.
something else. Um, and it would have meant a lot to me if she did apologize in the moment. It would gain a lot of respect from me if that was to happen. So I always wanted to make sure that I was respectful to my son, um, and he's respectful back to me. You know, I have certain boundaries. We are not friends. I'm your father. It's something more meaningful than being your friend. But I am friendly with you, and I respect you as my son. You can come to me anytime and talk to me about whatever you need to talk about. My big rule with him was do not lie to me. Whatever you mess up on, just tell me so we can work through it, but don't lie to me.
It's a good rule.
Um, and so there was only one time I was really pissed off with him because he lied to me. He didn't have to. Like we could have talked about this. We could have found some sort of solution. And I
Yeah.
scolded him for like 2 weeks straight. I was really angry because of that. Um, but he understood, and he understood he disappointed me, which made him feel terrible. Um, so these are concepts that I came up with how to be a father because these are the things I would have wanted. I would have
Yeah.
wanted my father to advocate for me. My son came to me um, in high school. Now he's 19, out of school. But in high school, he came to me and said, "Dad, I don't want to go back to the school." And I get it because the school he was going to, his mother moved to this area. That school was kind of a shitty school. When I was a kid, I was kind of hoping that, things had gotten better, but of course they didn't. And he came to me and said, I don't want to do this. And I could have just been like, just go. But like, he came to me for a reason. He wants me to advocate for him. So we figured something out. We did homeschooling for his junior year. And then what would be his senior year, he studied, he got his GED, and he just wanted to move forward. Um, and he did that part on his own. But I advocated for him to do that, speaking to his mother and had a plan for him so he would be safe because he
Yeah.
wasn't really safe. He wasn't happy there. And I think that's incredibly important that you have your child's back. Like if it's reasonable, if there's nothing crazy, I got your back. My son wanted to go to Japan at one point and be an artist and all this other stuff. I could have been the father who's like, no, you're not doing that. You're going to college. I said, all right, I'll be honest with you. It might not work out, but let's get you some Japanese lessons. What can I do to help you with this dream? And at the
Yeah.
time, I was just whatever you want to do, I just want to be supportive of it.
Hmm.
And in the back of my head, I'm like, this is probably not going to happen in the first place. But the last thing I want him to think is that my dad doesn't want to support the things that I want in my life. And
Yeah.
so, okay, and I even told him, it's like, if you go to Japan and it doesn't work out, it's fine. You're young. Like, so what? You have an experience. You're broke in Japan, you come back home, that's fine. Like life goes on.
Yeah.
So I never wanted him to be afraid of the world like I was when I was younger and afraid of taking risks and things like that. And so he's a lot healthier. He's actually, I say this, at the age of 19, he is way ahead of me, where I was at the age of 19. I was lost. I didn't know
That's the
exactly what
goal,
I
isn't
wanted
it?
to do.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think about like my son, and I'm like, I can't wait to tell him about the mistakes that I've made in my
Yeah.
life. But one thing that popped in my head when you were talking about there, when you were disappointed with him for lying to you that one time, you his recognition of the disappointment, and I'm assuming he's never going to forget that. And there's
No.
there's an energy there that it's a respect for authority, like a like that right there goes makes me think about that public shame energy that is missing in society right now. And
Yeah.
it I think it stems from a father figure putting their foot down and showing that we're not friends. I'm your father, and that's different. And you have to respect me. I'm going to respect you, but you also have to understand that I'm your father. And
Right.
there's a dynamic there that needs to happen. I got that. Like hearing you talk about that, I'm like I remember learning these lessons myself when I was younger from my father and the father figures that I had around me as when I was a child, because it was more than just my dad. Um, and I just like I'm seeing it. I'm like, man, we need more of that in society because there is such a lack of respect for um I mean, I would say authority, but really like other human beings at this point. It's not even your elders. It's literally no one gives a shit about anyone else anymore. And I think it's twofold. It's this, you know, society catering to selfishness,
Yeah.
really cater for yourself, worry about yourself, and then couple that with what we've been talking about this broken home epidemic that I truly feel it is. Because I mean, just take a look out the window, right? So, but really,
Well, the
go ahead, please respond.
well, I was going to say the narcissism
Hmm.
is a direct relation to someone's childhood because
It's a
it
good
is
point.
just taken to the extreme form. Because how, and I have a friend, uh, Dr. Natalie Martinek, who specializes in narcissism. We've had these conversations. Um, how it is understood from a child's perspective is that when they were a kid, they were not advocated for. Like no one cared about what they needed. Maybe they were neglected. Maybe they were abused. Maybe something was happening and the adults ignored them, but they were not advocated for. Hence, translation to them is that no one will care about me except for me. And
And
so,
they're learning from their parents that they're being selfish. The parents are being selfish. So they're
correct.
learning that selfishness also from their
Yes.
parents. It's like, and I have to do it for myself. Well, fine, fuck it. I'm gonna do it myself then.
Right. But
Hmm.
it's a um it's an understanding at a very young age that no one will advocate for me. There is no one's trustworthy. No one's going to care about my interests. I got to care about my interests, but it just goes to the extreme in certain circumstances. Obviously, I care about my interests over other people. Yes, of course. But when it comes to my son, I am supposed to sacrifice for him. But for them as a child, they didn't have people sacrificing for them. So they don't
Yeah.
believe that someone can be selfless. That's it's that belief that no one cares about you. No one's willing to like be gracious. Like for that person who is a narcissist, someone giving them something and wanting nothing in return is bullshit. That's not
Yeah.
possible. They want
Right.
something. I don't want your gift.
Inconceivable.
It's inconceivable.
Hmm.
That's because when they're a kid, their world is being formed. And what people don't understand why family separation is so detrimental is that for a child, their parents are their world. So
Yep.
when they get divorced, it's their world splitting in half. And everything becomes chaotic when you split a world in half. You don't know how that kid's going to respond to their world going in one direction and the other direction. They don't know how to treat it. Um, and adult dynamics, adult relationships are difficult for adults. It is way more difficult for a child to understand how adults are perceiving things. And the daddy and mommy don't love each other bullshit doesn't work, right? That, oh, okay, you don't love each other. As if they
Well,
understand the full concept of love in a
right.
relational standpoint. Like that's
Right.
that this is once again the adults doing the thing that they want to do,
Yep.
regardless of how their child is going to respond to their world splitting apart. It's, well, you know what? If I'm happy, they'll be happy. No, That's not how kids operate, right? That is a selfish
Yep.
rationalization for what you're about to do. Because like I tell this to anybody, if someone rationalizes something, it is because they understand without the rationalization, they appear like a terrible person. Because no one wants to appear like the bad guy. No one actually wants to believe that they're the bad person in any particular equation. So they're going to rationalize. It's in an innocent way. If you've been on a diet and you say, you know what, I want some ice cream. Well, I've been really good on my diet. So, what's it hurt if I have just ice cream tonight? Well, you're supposed to be on a diet. You're not supposed to have ice cream, but you're going to rationalize that thing you're not supposed to do so you don't appear like a bad person. You're convincing yourself this is actually a good thing, right? I've
Yeah.
earned this ice cream. Like, but you're only doing it because you know you're not supposed to do it. That's the only point for someone to rationalize. You're rationalizing bad behavior. And worse, you're rationalizing bad behavior that hurts your child. So I'm not one of those, no one should ever get divorced. Obviously, there are situations that divorces are 100% necessary. And those are the extreme circumstances. But I'll tell you this, I've never met a divorced person who didn't think they shouldn't have gotten divorced. Everyone thinks that their divorce, well, yeah, theirs is ridiculous, but mine was necessary. Everyone thinks that.
Of
So
course.
it's like, and obviously, if one person doesn't want to get a divorce, like you can't force the other person to stay. Um, So obviously it takes two in the equation. But man, if we had more parents who just said, you know what, our petty differences, we need to work this shit out so we can stay together for the benefit of our kid and not
Yep.
fake it,
That's
not
it right there.
pretend.
That's the statement, though. It's for the benefit of the kid. Like when
Yeah.
you have children, I think having children is one of the ultimate goals in life that one can have. It's the reason why I exist because someone chose to have me, right?
Mhm.
And we are continuing to live on this planet because of that fundamental part of life that having children. It is the goal. And I think that that is being weaned away because of depopulation efforts, and that's another time maybe. Um, but the ability to or not the ability, the choice. I'm learning this, right? Because I
Yeah.
have a son now that I will sacrifice anything for him. And my life is no longer about what I want and what I'm going to do in my life, other than to have the means to support him or give him the life that I think that will give him the best life, right? And whatever that takes, that's what my main goal is. And I'm fine with living that way, like sacrificing myself and what my enjoyments or my goals or whatever. I mean, as long as they're aiming in that direction because I wanna live for him. It's not that
Yeah.
I'm upset about this, right? I happily am living this way because, I mean, I look at him and he looks at me and smiles, and I'm like, "You can have everything. Yep, you can have the world," you know? And it's like, I wanna be there for him to do that, and I don't think a lot of people have children to have children. I think they're having kids because they're fucking and are being irresponsible, and then they're having children and going, great. I have a kid that's ruining my plans in life.
Yeah.
And I think that that is another problem. I mean, because a lot of people will be like, well, whatever, we're gonna raise this kid, or they have abortions, which again is another issue. Um, it sucks because there's so many different facets of these, and you said something earlier. They all are connected, and they all stem to childhood, and it's this never-ending cycle of shitty parenting producing kids that become shitty parents because that's what they learn. And it makes me think again, how do we stop it? How does it end? Where's that wedge that we could shove in there and end it? Like cuz you became a father very young,
Mhm.
and thankfully for your son, you were taking that opportunity to become a man yourself for your son. which is
Yeah.
very commendable. Just to let you know, it's a major respect for that, especially being
Thank you.
21 and raising seemingly a very smart, astute young man. So
Yeah.
that's awesome. But to my question though, where do we go? Like, what is the you obviously have thought about this a lot. You've written a couple books about this kind of thing.
Mhm.
What do you think? What can be done?
Well, the first thing, just like any problem, you can't change what you don't acknowledge. So we have to
Good point.
actually acknowledge that this is a problem. It's not enough. And I'm around conservatives and listen to conservatives all the time. It's not enough to just say fatherless behavior and just keep it moving. Like,
Yeah,
like that's not a show of that you actually care. That is ridiculing people for circumstances they had no control over.
good
Um,
point.
it is. It's more about the things that we do have control over. Often people make it about systems and the government and all these things that are distant from us. I have no control over every single piece of legislature and all these different things that come through. But what I do have control over is me, how I raise my kid, how I interact with my son, advocating for another child that I am related to, or calling out bad behavior of the people who are around me. Um, and so I'm going to do that. That's the thing that I have control over. And if I can do it, the next person can do it, and so on and so forth. So the book is an attempt to call it out, to just first acknowledge that this is a problem. Parental selfishness is a massive issue. We just
Yeah, it
don't
is.
call it that. We call it we make everything seem so accidental,
Yeah.
and it just life happens, and I was young. It just becomes all these different excuses.
Yep. Yep.
Um, and it's infuriating, especially for me as someone you just heard my background and what I went through
Sure.
and how hard I wanted to be a good father for my son. To just hear someone like my father get excuses for his behavior, that pisses me off because one took effort and the other one took no effort. And there is no reason why this person gets more empathy than I do for me trying to consciously become a better father and making mistakes along the way for this person who never fucking tried.
Yeah.
Um, and that is a cultural issue. That is a cultural issue that we have to call out. So the first step, if we're going to change anything, we have to acknowledge, and it sounds very leftist, we have to acknowledge how complicit we are.
Yeah.
um, we have to acknowledge our part. Have we been that person who's allowed our neighbor, our friend, our relative to just be a terrible parent and never call it out and just to get away with stuff?
I'm sorry. I'm laughing because you're saying that, and I'm in my head. I'm looking through my memory banks of the times that because I ran a skate school. I taught
Mhm.
kids as young as I think my youngest was 3 years old.
Wow.
Um, but I have 8 nieces and nephews. I have 58 cousins in my dad's side alone.
Mm.
And I remember I'm very much the same with every single child. I always talk to them as an adult. I don't necessarily treat them like an adult, but I talk to them like they're someone worth talking to. And I think that that is very important.
Yeah.
But I have boundaries and I don't let them speak ill or whatever. And I have a cousin who has a daughter and they're very liberal and they're very snowplow parenting. They just let her get away with everything and just make excuses for her all the time. And I don't if she broke something of mine when they were visiting and I was like, that really sucks that you broke it, and like I think that, you should say sorry to me. And like they got mad at me for just saying that. Right? And I'm like, but she did break it and didn't apologize, so she should apologize, And it's like I basically was the parent in that situation, teaching her like you broke something that isn't yours and you should apologize to me because that's what you do, right? And
Right.
they got mad at me for saying that in that situation. And I'm like, I mean, I kind of like made fun of them a little bit, and I haven't spoken to them anymore. That's one of my cousins, it's kind of, but it's like so that's what made me think of, because like that was a situation where, I mean, I was doing the parenting, I guess, in that situation, and they got mad at me instead of saying, "Hey, actually, he's right. I should eh, back my cousin up," but they didn't. And it's funny because, man, I don't think he watches my show, but um, she wears the pants in that relationship, and she's the one who was upset with me because I think I was a man teaching her, or like a I don't know, a figure of authority to her daughter, and she didn't I don't think she liked that. So,
Was
I found that
so the
very interesting.
so your cousin, your
My cousin
cousin
is
by
is the
blood,
boy, the man, the father.
man. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
By any
And his wife didn't
chance,
like, by any chance, what?
do you know her situation with when
With
she
her
was a kid?
parents?
Yeah.
I don't, but it
Okay.
wouldn't surprise me if her mom wore the pants, or, because that's what it makes me think of, because she's very much the authority in that relationship. And
Yeah.
it's just like, okay, it's once you're aware of these truths about how kids are affected by their childhood, and like when you see them as an adults and you know where it spawns from, you can then recognize it in other adults that have these issues. So
Yep.
when you're speaking about these things, that I said it earlier, like everyone knows that one person. I feel like I could break down. I feel like I'm a pretty good judge of character. So, um, especially around parenting, I love being an uncle. I've been an uncle for my youngest nephew turned 16
Mm.
like 2 weeks ago. So I've been an uncle for a long time, and I've been around my nieces and nephews. I was like 12 when my youngest brother was born. So like, I've been around kids a lot, and
Mm.
I always appreciated and enjoyed being that teacher, father figure, kind of whatever. Um so it's interesting now how important this dynamic is. I guess I'm just kind of reeling through my brain of all these different instances of situations that I know have spawned from youth. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
Wow.
that's interesting. Um, you know, what they don't realize is that they're hurting their child more than they're helping them.
Yep. It's true.
Everything about raising kids is like giving them micro doses of the world,
Yep.
right? So doing things that are age appropriate. And when it comes to discipline, when it comes to manners, all these things, like you don't start disciplining your kid when they're 12. You start it when they're very young, right? You teach them boundaries.
Exactly.
You teach them all these things in age appropriate ways so that it becomes habitual. So that when they do become 12, 13, 14, it's not a foreign concept. It's just the way
Right.
of life. They
Yeah.
spent their longest memories are have been surrounded by, I'm not allowed to do this. I am allowed to do this. I'm supposed to talk to people like this. I'm supposed to say thank you when someone gives me something. I'm supposed to apologize when I do something wrong. Like
Yep.
all these micro habits that you tell a kid over and over and over when they're very young becomes something that you never have to bring up again because it's just etched into their memory. It's the
Yep.
habit that they formed over and over. So what they're doing is handicapping their child
Yep.
because they're avoiding them being accountable. They're avoiding them when it comes to just manners. If you do something wrong, you apologize, right? You're not asking them to pay for it. You're just saying, could your child at least apologize for what they did wrong? Um, these are things that are simple and most people understand. But when you avoid for your child to be accountable and to apologize, you're raising ultimately a child who's going to go into the world who's going to be severely punished if that's her conduct.
Yep.
Is you're going to be punished in
Entitlement.
various ways. And if you're entitled, right?
Mhm.
You're going to be the person who's going to clash with others because people don't like entitled people. They're going to be the
Facts.
person who loses out on opportunities at work. They might be the person who gets fired from their job. You know, when people talk about the kids who are in these colleges and they're talking about safe spaces and freaking out, like a lot of people think, oh, they're just exaggerating. But if you spent your entire childhood never facing consequences, never facing
Yep.
hardship because your parents did your homework for you, your parents yelled at the teacher when you failed the test, like
Yep.
you're special, you do everything perfect, everything goes to plan. And then you put them in an environment where the parents aren't there to control that environment. It is going to be hard for them. It is going to be something that shocks their system where they're not the smartest kid in their class, nevertheless,
Oh
the
yeah.
entire school. Like
Yeah.
all of these things are going to rock a kid. And the parents who helicopter the children and bulldoze opportunities for them to learn lessons, what they
Fail
don't
them.
realize is that they're handicapping their kids and they're weakening them.
Yep.
And one of the things I'm really proud of, 'cause you mentioned before my son becoming a bartender.
Yep.
So like I said, the micro lessons of my son learning disappointment when he was young. There was something that I did, and this is a great tip for you and any other parent to a young child. My son played like these little games. He was very young, and he would get really pissed off, like kid pissed off when he would lose.
Yeah.
And he started doing that over and over. And I'm watching him, and I'm like, I don't like that. Like, I don't like how he's responding to
Right.
losing that game because that's going to trickle into all these other things. So I started introducing moments of disappointment. So
On
in a
purpose.
very on purpose.
Mm.
So when he would come over, he would like, "Hey, can I have a cookie?" And I would say, "No, you can't have a cookie." No, he wasn't bad. I just said, "No, you can't have them."
Hmm.
And he would at first pout, and then second time he pouted a little less longer. And then it just got better and better to the point where I was like, "No." He's like, "Okay." And he just moved on.
Yep.
And then there were times when I would say no. He said, "Okay." And he moved on. And I'll come back to him 10 minutes later, like, "You can have a cookie because of how you responded to that."
Mm.
And so that's child ways of introducing microdoses of disappointment. And that type of thing worked with him. His demeanor changed. He got better when it came to disappointment, so much so that fast forward, you know, his mother got a divorce from his stepfather. That's a lot to kind of deal with. He handled it. He took it in stride. The pandemic happens. He's taking it in stride. You know, he's coming to me asking me questions like, should I be scared? And we had this conversation. He's taking that in stride. So now fast forward, he moves to Pennsylvania, like to the border of PA. So he's like an hour away from me now.
Not far.
Um, not too far. Now he's driving. He's like, I'll come and see you, Dad." Like it's a weird dynamic now.
That's
Um,
cool.
but he just moved, so he had to find another job, and he was struggling finding work. And he had went to bartending school. He finished that. He was like, "I want to be a bartender." And I was like, "Why?" He's like, "Oh, because I want to become an electrician, and I want a job that's flexible, and bartending allows me to do that." I was like, "Okay, you came up with this on your own."
Smart.
So he wanted to find a bartending job, so he couldn't find it. And he, for the first time, like kind of like really struggled. And he basically told himself like he was going to take anything he can get because he needs to find a job. So he found a job as a busboy and took that job. And this boy just busted his ass, like so much so that everyone respected him. He was the hard worker. As a busboy, became employee of the month at one point. And I went there for his birthday to his job, and I'm watching him like he's blowing out his cake, but he's still technically working.
Yeah.
And he's just working his ass. He's all over the place. He's just bouncing around.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone, I could watch everyone's face that he works with, and everyone respected him. Everyone liked him. You know, everyone saw how hard he worked. Everyone joked with him, and he was laughing. Like everyone really liked his presence. And a few months later, they offer him a role as a server. Cool, make tips, make a little bit more money. So he takes that, kicks ass when it came to that. A few months later, bartending job opens up. He sends me a text, Dad, they offered me a bartending job. I'm about to
Boom.
start next week. So all of that from working really hard. Yeah, you didn't get the thing that you wanted right away, but
Yeah.
there's a pathway and you got to keep working hard. I told him when he was a teenager, and revolving around the time that I was telling you I was pissed off at him because he lied to me. And some
Okay.
of it revolved around him not working hard. And I told him, you cannot turn off and on hard work. Like you just have to fucking do it. And
Yep.
you have to work hard for the things that you want. And I really scolded him about that, but I needed to at that age, in a teenager's because he's about to go into the world. I've told my son, when you go into the world, no one's going to care about you as a man. You're going to be an adult man. You got to take care of your shit. So you got to do your thing. You got to work hard. You have to earn the respect. And he's put that into practice. And now he's a bartender. This is his first week in training. And these are the proud father moments because of all those micro doses of lessons throughout his
Yep.
like very early years, his teenage years, and now he's an adult in the world with a license and driving and a job that he got on his own. All of these things he did on his own. Even with him getting a GED, that was his plan. I didn't have to tell him like make sure you study. He did that on his own. He worked hard. He aced the test. He went to bartending school the next week. I didn't even know. Like he just started taking life and just
Making it
doing the
happen.
thing that yeah, just making it happen. And
House
when he
done.
struggled, he just kept grinding and got the job and just kept grinding. And now he's in the position that he ultimately wanted. Maybe I think that entire process was maybe 6 months, right? All because, and he even says, like, normally it's not this fast, but all is because he worked hard. He was a good employee. He made friends from that job. Now he has a social circle, which is hard when you move to any place to build a
Yeah.
social circle. Now he has friends he hangs out with and stuff like that. He is living the life at 19 that I wish I lived at 19. Like he is working hard, having friends, and doing the things that he needs to do in a healthy way. Um, and it's all because of the doses of manhood that I taught him along the way. So I'm incredibly proud of him, and I want him to surpass me in every single way.
Sounds like you will. He
Yeah,
may have already have.
probably, bastard.
Yeah. You don't
He's
know.
taller
Yeah,
than me
right?
too.
He's taller than you?
He's taller than me.
Nice.
He's like 6'1".
Oh, that's awesome. Wow. So, well, that was great. I mean, it's been, I think, 3 years since you were on the show last, and it
Yeah,
feels like it's things are going well for you. I see you doing interviews around the place, and you got this new book that just came out, and it's not just another book that people are releasing. It is really a good directional shift that
mhm,
society needs.
yeah.
And I really love your messaging, Adam, and I really want uh, great success for you. And where can people check these books out?
The Children We Left Behind, you can purchase it directly from WrongSpeak. You can go to wrongspeak.net and purchase it there.
Hmm.
Or you can go to Amazon, any place that you want. The audiobook is available. I mean, I've been having some issues on Audible, but it is everywhere else. It's on Spotify and all the other audiobook platforms, but it should be on Audible soon if you're an Audible listener. Um,
Very nice.
and obviously the ebook is everywhere too, but wherever is your favorite retailer, go there and you can get a copy of it.
Awesome. Well, in the description below, I have your X account and also your website, which you can access the books through if you just take a look through on his website. Uh,
Yep.
Adam, that hour flew by really fast. I try to keep my interviews to about an hour now. Thank you very much for joining, and you're always welcome back on the show. I wish you great success. I'm really proud of you and what you've done in your life to now raise such a incredible young man. So good
Thank
stuff.
you. And congratulations once again, becoming a
Oh, thank
father.
you.
I
Yeah,
know
thanks.
you'll be a great father. Um, and if you ever, behind the scenes, you have any questions or anything like that, just let me know.
I will. Thank you, Adam.
No
I
problem.
appreciate you. All right, everyone. Well, thank you very much. Go check out Adam and his website. He actually has a couple different. You do a lot actually.
I know.
You constantly posting really good stuff. I think you have your own blog.
Yeah.
You have
And
a
my Substack.
podcast at your Substack. You're doing interviews. He's doing a lot, and if you can't tell, he's got a great head on his shoulder. So go check him out. Go give him a follow. And Adam, I appreciate you, mate, and I'll see you next time.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, everyone. Cheers. Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I've gotten I was so in the zone. There's some super chats that
Oh,
there's not
no.
many.
Can't forget the
Not
super
many.
chat.
I just wanted to read some super chats. Thank you guys. So Robert Wiles for celebrating 53 months. Thank you, Robert. Says, I hope this makes Diana smile. I wish I could have been here last night, but my friend Tomby and his wife stopped by last night. They are visiting the US. It was nice getting to meet him in person. Be blessed. Oh, that's cool. That's nice that you got to meet Tomby in person. That's cool. My butt reeks for 5 says, I recently found out my dad has been lying to me my whole life. Long story. You put it down just right. It's about respect and also trust.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I don't know if you want to get into the details of that, but I hope that you have handled it well. Whatever, may be behind that.
Yeah.
He says again for 5, says the only right you have is the dirt under your feet. If you want something, you have to work for it and have the patience and willpower. Well, those are facts. That's true.
Amen.
And Diana Francisco for 5 says, thank you, Adam, for having Adam on and talking about such needed conversation about family. Thank you, guys. I apologize for the fake out. It was just summed up so well. And I'm like, that was such a good interview. And I'm like, all right, like, let's just end it there. And, maybe have you on another time and continue talking. Cause I feel like we just we didn't even talk about some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about, but it was a great conversation. And then I saw the super chats. I was like, oh, of course. What am I doing? I'm not a professional, even though I've been doing this for 5 years. Okay. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you all very much. Tomorrow, I got George Howard. We're going to talk about ancient civilizations and stuff, which one of those things I want to talk to you about. Because, like, I don't know, like, what is your, do you believe in ancient civilizations? What's your thought process on that?
I don't even know what that fully entails.
It's a good response.
I have a lot of theories about a lot of stuff, though.
Well, you got to come back, Adam. You got to come back, and we'll have a little more lighthearted conversation about stuff. So,
Absolutely.
all right. Well, we'll see you next time. Cheers. All right, everybody.
Peace.
See ya.